Welcome back, Focus Learners. Today, we're cracking open a declassified dossier that honestly reads exactly like a real-life spy thriller. We're going to look at the documented facts surrounding one of India's most powerful, yet historically shadowy security figures, Ajit Doval. Throughout this explainer, we're diving deep into the historical record together. We'll break down his incredible evolution from a young, undercover operative all the way to the very apex of a nation's security apparatus. And look, there's going to be no rumors, no political spin here, just a fascinating, highly structured look at the actual source material.
So this is the central mystery we're unraveling today. I mean, think about it. How does an undercover field agent become the absolute apex of a nation's security apparatus? How does one person navigate from walking the streets in complete disguise to literally dictating the geopolitical maneuvers of a nuclear-armed state? It is an absolutely extraordinary journey. We're going to examine it step by step, completely impartially, and map out exactly how his tactical, boots-on-the-ground decisions eventually translated into grand political strategy.
Okay, let's dive right into this declassified career blueprint. We'll start with Act 1, the operative, then move to Act 2, the negotiator. In Act 3, we'll explore his time as a shadow strategist, and finally hit Act 4, the apex of power.
All right, Act 1, the operative. Let's look at his early missions in the field.
Born into an army family, Ajit Doval's sharp intellect was pretty obvious right out of the gate. I mean, he cleared the notoriously rigorous UPSC exams on his very first attempt at just 22 years old. Fast forward to late 1971, he's a brilliant 26-year-old officer, fresh from his exams, and he faces his first major crucible in Kerala. Now, a seemingly trivial incident, literally a shoe thrown from a hotel, sparked severe religious riots in Falassery. Looting and arson were just rampant. The situation was so incredibly volatile that even the local police were terrified to enter the area. Assigned to handle this massive crisis, Doval faced a huge glaring problem. How do you stop a violent mob when deploying brute police force might actually just escalate the bloodshed?
Well, notice his incredibly methodical response here. Instead of just rushing in with baton swinging, he took a highly analytical approach. He actually hit the streets himself, gathering the absolute smallest details of intelligence. He selectively deployed a heavy police presence only to the specific areas coordinating the violence. And here's the kicker. Without using any force, he identified the leaders of both clashing groups and initiated direct, peaceful negotiations. Realizing that stolen property was the main driver of all this ongoing anger, he methodically traced and returned the looted goods between the groups. It was literally a masterpiece of de-escalation, quelling the deadly riots in just 1 week. And this brilliant tactical success, it immediately caught the attention of New Delhi, earning him a rapid transfer right up to the Intelligence Bureau. And this brilliantly illustrates his unbelievable knack for manipulating human intelligence. 6. This number represents the 6 out of 7 top rebel commanders of the Mizo National Front that Doval successfully flipped to India's side. Sent to a highly volatile Mizoram in the early 70s, Doval didn't go in with military force. Instead, he infiltrated the rebel camps deep in the hills of Myanmar, posing as a spy agent. He gained their trust, became their drinking buddy, and even hosted them at his own home for pork dinners. Get this, his own wife had absolutely no idea the men she was cooking for were wanted militants. Over 2 years, he convinced 6 of these key commanders to completely abandon their rebellion, collapsing the rebel leader's power entirely and forcing a peaceful resolution with the Indian government. Just wild.
Shortly after that, Doval was deployed to the princely state of Sikkim. Now, the local king was heavily influenced by his wife, who just so happened to be a U.S. CIA agent, which was drawing the state into foreign interest. Doval's mission? Weaken this regime from the inside without sparking public outrage. So he provided covert political backing to a local leader, helping to build massive public support against the king. This maneuvering ultimately led to a staggering 97% public referendum vote for Sikkim to merge with India in 1975. Now, why this matters is that it perfectly showcases his core philosophy, winning through subversion and intelligence rather than direct combat. For these back-to-back successes, Doval was awarded the highly prestigious President's Police Medal in just 7 years. To put that into perspective, that's an honor that usually takes a minimum of 14 years of service to achieve.
Moving on to Act 2, the negotiator, high-stakes crisis management. After spending 7 perilous years deep undercover in Pakistan, literally gathering critical intelligence on their nuclear program while constantly evading detection, Doval returned to face a series of massive domestic crises. In 1988, heavily armed militants had occupied the Golden Temple. Now, completely terrified of repeating the bloody mistakes of the past, the government desperately needed a bloodless solution. Relying on his impeccable Urdu and all that knowledge from his years in Pakistan, Doval actually infiltrated the temple, disguised as an undercover ISI agent. Once inside, he gained the militants' trust, mapped out their exact locations, and secretly communicated the whole setup to commandos waiting outside. He then strategically cut off their water, food, and electricity in the sweltering heat. Completely demoralized and outmaneuvered, the militants were eventually convinced by Doval himself to surrender peacefully. Let's move to and see how this builds into an international crisis. In 1999, Indian Airlines flight IC-814 was hijacked. The plane was frantically routed from Amritsar to Lahore to Dubai before finally touching down in Taliban-controlled Kandahar, Afghanistan. With 15 prior hijack negotiations already under his belt, Doval was immediately deployed as part of a 7-member team to negotiate directly with the terrorists.
So Doval finds himself under immense pressure. The Indian media and the absolutely terrified families of the hostages were demanding action. But a military rescue in hostile Afghan territory was pretty much impossible without risking all the passengers' lives. The terrorists initially demanded a massive ransom, $200 million, and the release of 36 militants. Through grueling, high-stakes talks, Doval managed to negotiate them down to a final agreement of releasing just 3 militants and absolutely zero money. While this was viewed as a severe national setback at the time, this deeply matters because the source material notes Doval immediately used this harrowing experience to drastically overhaul and strengthen India's internal security frameworks. He basically helped create the modern multi-agency intelligence centers that are used today.
Which brings us to Act 3, the Shadow Strategist, Political Clashes and Covert Ops.
Moving into the 2000s, intelligence officials noted Doval's covert political maneuvering in Kashmir and his growing closeness with certain political leaders caused some significant friction with the ruling Congress Party. This eventually led to his unusually early retirement in 2005. But hey, retirement didn't exactly stop his operations. Right as he was leaving office, Doval attempted an incredibly ambitious, completely unofficial operation to eliminate India's most wanted man, Dawood Ibrahim. Intelligence confirmed Doval would be attending a family wedding in Dubai. Wanting to avoid direct Indian military involvement, Doval recruited 2 hitmen from Dawood's bitter rival, Chota Rajan. He arranged fake passports and was personally briefing the hitman in a Delhi hotel room. But, in a twist straight out of a movie, Mumbai police suddenly raided the hotel room. Despite Doval's fierce arguments with the officers, the hitmen were arrested, and the whole heist was completely thwarted by domestic police rivalries. You really can't make this stuff up.
Denied action in the field, Doval pivoted to intellectual warfare. In 2009, he partnered with an RSS-affiliated organization to found the Vivekananda International Foundation, or VIF. Now, this think tank was designed to reshape national security and diplomacy, but it very quickly became a massive political force. In 2011, VIF published a highly impactful report on black money hidden abroad, and they shared it directly with the political opposition. This report was literally the catalyst that fueled massive, nationwide anti-corruption protests led by figures like Anna Hazare and Arvind Kejriwal. These protests heavily destabilized the ruling government, paving the way for a monumental political shift.
And that brings us to our final chapter, Act 4, the apex of power, return as National Security Advisor.
That massive political shift culminated in 2014 when the BJP won the national elections. Their very first major appointment in the security sector brought Doval completely out of retirement, installing him as the National Security Advisor. For a former police and intelligence officer to take a role that is traditionally reserved for foreign service diplomats, that was unprecedented. So the crucial point is how Doval fundamentally changed India's approach to national safety. Historically, India relied on a purely defensive strategy, waiting for an attack to happen and then trying to stop it or react to it. Doval introduced the doctrine of defensive offensive. This means identifying vulnerabilities and proactively neutralizing potential threats at their source, way before they ever reach Indian soil. From surgical strikes to major geopolitical moves, the sources state that since 2014, not a single leaf moves in India's security apparatus without Doval's direct planning. But of course, immense power brings immense scrutiny. Opposing politicians levied heavy allegations against Doval and his family. The opposition highlighted that one of his sons ran a financial fund with a Pakistani business partner, calling it a major security risk. Further political allegations claimed another son opened a fund in the Cayman Islands mere days after India's demonetization policy, implying illicit financial links. However, to maintain total impartiality here, we've got to look at the documented legal outcome. Doval and his family actually filed a criminal defamation lawsuit against the politicians and the media outlets publishing these claims. And the legal reality? The courts favored Doval. It resulted in the opposing politicians having to issue a formal, written apology, fully retracting their claims.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with the final thought. We've traced a path from the riot-torn streets of Kerala to deep undercover missions in hostile nations, all the way to the absolute highest advisory seat in the country. Many observers actually call him India's modern Chanakya because of his ability to maneuver through these incredibly deep political and tactical complexities. But what do you think? Based on the documented facts we've explored today, can a single intelligence operative fundamentally alter the geopolitical destiny of a nation? It's a deeply fascinating question, and I highly encourage you to keep learning and investigating the facts for yourself. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep that curiosity sharp.